For a closer look at the White House's relationship with American business, I want to bring in Yale School of Management professor Jeffrey Sonnenfeld. He is the Yale Chief Executive Leadership Institute and CNBC contributor as well. Good morning to you, sir.
Oh, good morning.
Okay, so Tim Cook has ostensibly had one of the best relationships, as these relationships go, with this president. You've seen lots of stories praising him for navigating the president. And here we have a situation where all of a sudden the president's taking shots at him. What do you make of this?
Well, it is a perfect case study to look at in how to manage a relationship with Donald Trump. I've known President Trump, as you know, for a quarter of a century, which is longer than any of his immediate lieutenants, other than family members and Steve Witkoff. And through that period of time, I have seen CEOs that melt down, that understand how to take him on. The old sports superstar agent Mark McCormick had once said that anger can be used as a negotiation tool, but not as a calculated, but it has to be as a calculated act and not as an emotional reaction. So when President Trump uses anger, he knows what he's doing in advance. It's not usually a tantrum, even though it looks it. But if you respond the same way, you lose control. Basically, you can't fire back. And Tim Cook has been very careful to not get into the mud.
And he hasn't. My question is a slightly different one, which is I was with a very senior executive in America just yesterday, as this happened, and we were discussing it. And he said, that's what you get. You go down to Mar-a-Lago in Washington, you stand next to the president, you do all the things. You say, I'm going to do $500 billion, I'm going to genuflect, I'll bend the knee, I'll kiss the ring, I'll do all the things, and then he's going to come after me anyway. And so...
Or is it he did 99 of the things, but he didn't go on the Middle East trip? I mean, was that a catalyst for...
I don't know.
Well, the guys who went on the Middle East trip, I think they were smart to do it. But I don't know that he turned it down. I think that there were specific AI-focused deals there, and of course that's a business of Apple Intelligence. But I think that Trump does take things personally. However, you don't respond personally. The divide and conquer antic is a scary one. We've seen CEOs melt down when they got into that. Trump's negotiation style is always to, instead of building up trust.
Did he pull back on India then? I mean, look, Apple, to the extent that there's a company that is stuck, given these sort of political headwinds, they're in a place that's actually very complicated.
Well, he did, you know, Trump 1.0. Tim Cook did what Trump wanted. He moved out quite a bit of production, of course, to Vietnam. 20% of iPads are from there, and 90% of his watches, I believe, are from there. And of course, that was Vietnam, rather. And India is about 20% of phones, and he could ramp up, if you believe Dan Ives this morning, he can ramp up 60 to 65% in India if need be. But that wasn't enough, as now President Trump's changed his mind on India and on Vietnam to bring it all back here. But there's no way that Tim Cook is going to allow prices on an iPhone to increase more than 3 times to $3,500 per phone. And what he does is he doesn't put Trump in a corner. He doesn't insult back. Trump can be like a wounded animal slashing away back at you if you take him on that way, if you poke the bear. Tim Cook talks to him quietly. But Tim Cook also knows that this leadership model is different. It's like a hub with spokes coming off of it. It's almost a tribal model, is that he knows who to deal with. It's not Howard Lutnick. It's not Peter Navarro. I'm sorry to say I introduced Navarro to Trump years ago, even before Jared thought he did. Jared now admits I introduced them to him, so blame me. But many CEOs, a major transportation CEO yesterday and that I spoke with, and a major industrialist told me just the day before, they will have nothing to do with dealing with Navarro, but they do know that working with Scott Bessent and working with Jamison Greer, the trade rep.
A separate question, which is, we've heard since the beginning of this administration, you know, so many big foreign direct investments or big investments by American corporation announcements. If we look at this 3 years from now, what do you think we're going to see? Meaning, do you think that it's actually going to be a record and we should go, oh, my goodness, this is really a seismic change and this is fabulous for the country, which is my hope? Or do you say to yourself, we're going to see something very different?
Well, I think Trump and even Navarro are not completely out of bounds in talking about the need to adjust the China relationship. Navarro used to talk about the 7 deadly sins. I wish they'd get back to that. Intellectual property issue, enforced ownership, and things like that. That data can't travel outside of China that's produced there unless it's managed on Huawei equipment. Things that's crazy. Things they needed to address, but not putting in these cross-the-board tariffs. Is that CEOs 85% tell us it should be selective tariffs.
I get it. I'm asking a different question.
Well, what will last?
I'm asking, when you look at the NVIDIA announcements or different chip manufacturers who say they're going to be manufacturing in Arizona, is that something do you say to yourself, all this is going to happen anyway? Do you say this happened because of this administration? Do you say they say they're going to do it and it's not going to happen? Obviously, Apple came out with its $500 billion investment. Do you think that when somebody goes back and measures that later, they're going to look at that and go, this was an unbelievable time in America? Or are you going to say this was policy by press release and the press release wasn't worth what was on the page? Well,
if you take a look at the chip makers, they're doing a fairly good job privately meeting with them, as well as people like Michael Dell, Arvind Krishna of IBM. They put zero money in. IBM, I believe, has never given a political donation in their history, but they have great influence by talking privately with Trump about, for example, revisiting the CHIPS Act. Just because it was a Biden creation doesn't mean it was wrong. In fact, Biden was too slow, as actually the Secretary of Commerce was too slow in releasing the funds. I believe the CEO of Intel lost his job because only 5% of the funds were released that should have gone out on the CHIPS Act. But so you'll see some things. The Taiwan Semiconductor, you've probably seen it. I've seen it just north of Arizona. That construction's been underway for years. He's taking full credit as if it just happened. Some of that stuff will be lasting. But they're going to take a look. Is this equal protection? They're getting the same deal. Do you realize that half of Elon Musk's production worldwide is in China? He produces 2 million cars in China. I know nobody talks about this. 1 million are sent for export outside of China. Wait a minute. Why isn't that anybody complaining about that? Ford only produces 25% of what Tesla does in China. GM produces twice as much. But Ford and GM, it's Ford.
Hold on. Just so we're clear, though, the cars that are being produced in China by Tesla that you say are being exported are not being exported to the U.S. They're being exported to parts of Europe. They're being exported to parts of Africa. Being exported elsewhere, correct?
Yeah, it's still being exported elsewhere, which is an issue. Now, if you believe Navarro, that Tesla in the U.S. is an assembler of parts made elsewhere, and of course Elon Musk
took issue with that. We talked to him about it on this show.
But then we put in the drivetrain, brake systems, and tires, and we realized maybe Navarro's not exactly crazy yet again. There are sources that coming from elsewhere. Are people being held to the same rules? And that's a critical issue. But CEOs, they don't have a choice whether or not to deal with Trump. They have to figure out how to deal with him. And it's not by putting him on the spot. It's through collective action. The Business Roundtable has done a fair to mediocre job. Surprisingly, they've been really backpedaling a little bit. They make some statements and all, but to the shock and amazement of everybody, the ultra-conservative, historically, National Association of Manufacturers Jay Timmons has been way more out there and direct. I mean, they were in favor of the Vietnam War. They were not big environmentalists. They were not big on civil rights issues. And they were very reactive. Not now. And that's a difficult group. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce was just a huge group, large and small, old and young, more rural and urban, and yet they're doing a very good job there of addressing Trump. You don't want individual CEOs to poke the bear, and the Business Roundtable needs to step up a little bit more. They backpedaled a little because I don't know why, but they sit in rows and columns like they're in church pews when Trump comes in to meet with them, and they don't actually have an active, lively debate.